Let's begin today with a pretty significant action taken by the U.S. State Department to remove the group Mujahideen-e-Khalq from the U.S. government's terrorist list. It's a group many Americans have now heard of, though many simply know it as the MEK because of the frequently played commercials the group has sponsored that air on most cable networks.
MEK is Iran's democratic opposition, working for a nuclear-free Iran founded on human rights. Unjustly listed a terrorist group, MEK is the victim of violence by the radical regime in Iran and their Iraqi allies. Europe has delisted MEK. And in 2010, a U.S. court ordered a review. Iranians, U.S. lawmakers, and former senior officials demand delisting. Secretary Clinton, for democracy and freedom in Iran, delist MEK.
Well, it appears that will happen. So the MEK and the dozens of Americans who have gone to bat for them have now gotten their wish. But it is not quite as simple as, a peaceful group wrongly put on a list of evil terrorists. I want to read part of a document put forth by the Bush administration in making the case for war with Iraq back in 2002. The section is titled Saddam Hussein's Support for International Terrorism. It says Iraq shelters terrorist groups, including the Mujahideen-e-Khalq organization, which has used terrorist violence against Iran and in the 1970s was responsible for killing several U.S. military personnel and U.S. civilians. So this is just one of the 6 bullet points on the list of Saddam's terror-related activities. And now, a decade later, things have changed immensely. To talk more about why this is the case, I'm joined by Rima Abu Hamdia, RT Arabic correspondent. And Rima, we all know, that the MEK is opposed to the current government of Iran. And for the most part, so is the U.S. So is this just one of those situations, the enemy of my enemy is my friend?
Well, first of all, from the ads that you just aired a little bit ago, it tells you how lobbying is important in this country and what lobbying has led this country to do, meaning that they're delisting MEK, a group that was deemed terrorist, just until lately, just until, as the document even shows, just until very recently. Well, this is an organization that the U.S. and other countries said that it's a terrorist organization. The organization is still the same. It has not changed its focus. It has not changed its activities. It has not changed anything particularly. The only thing that changed is the political atmosphere, the political environment around it, which led the U.S. to take this decision that is being actually criticized by even U.S. officials or former officials and U.S. journalists in the U.S.
Let me break down a few things that you said, because you hit a lot of important points. And the first is lobbying, the power of lobbying in the United States. Of course, Rima, you and I have lived in Washington for years. We see before our very eyes what lobbying, and more particularly what the lobbying dollars can do. However, if Al-Qaeda, if the Taliban, was able to get a bunch of money to U.S. Congress people, to former, people in the Senate and the House, they couldn't convince the, our lawmakers to do that. Why is MEK so successful?
Because there is Iran. And the focus here, the whole point here is Iran. This group is anti-Iran, so is the U.S. government, so is a lot of other governments in the region. And as they even say publicly, their goal is to oust the government, even to remove the Iranian government, and that's what they're trying to do. And delisting them will help them achieve this goal. This is exactly what the U.S. publicly says. They are they do have disagreements with Iran, and this is one of the groups that will help them, and they did before.
Yeah, certainly. Groups on this terrorist list, U.S. citizens are forbidden from giving any sort of support, whether it's advice, whether it's money. So coming off that list means that, people here in the U.S., people in other allied countries can safely give money and other forms of support to the group. But you say that their goal is to, unseat Ahmadinejad, to get rid of the Iranian government as it is currently. What do they then want to replace it with? I mean, do you know?
Well, do they know? We've seen them do that in other countries. Iraq is one example. Afghanistan is a second example. Now what's going on in other Arab countries. They don't know who's coming next. But a lot of people criticize the U.S. also for its short-term short-term strategies, meaning that they're just thinking of what's going on or what's going to happen if we take this decision today, but not about its consequences, a year down the road. And this is exactly what happened with Iraq. Now it's a failure country. Afghanistan is another failure country. The Arab Spring is a third example of what's going on. Maybe they don't even know what they're going to replace the Iranian regime with. Their goal is to get rid of this regime at the moment, at least for the MEK. And for them, it doesn't really matter what comes afterwards, because that's what's important for them now.
It's really interesting, the timing, as you say. And I think it's important, though, because the timing right now of U.S.-Iranian relations, this is such an important issue that both Governor Mitt Romney and President Obama are going to make in the next few weeks, talking about Iran, talking about the importance of, in Romney's case, taking action, making sure that Israel is the first priority when it comes to Iran. President Obama has said he wants to, this is an option. All options are on the table, but there seems to be a hesitance and perhaps the desire for some sort of diplomatic attempt. Talk about the delisting of MEK in terms of U.S.-Iranian relations.
It's not going to get any better. Everyone knows that. The Iranian government, even the reformists within the Iranian government, it's definitely going, by a lot of, at least observers, a lot of them say that it's just going to drive the relations even worse, or it's going to affect the relations in such a negative way. And we all know that. The Iranian government is not going to be happy with this decision. Even within the U.S., a lot of people are not happy with this decision. They criticize it. But we also saw how Iran was not happy when some European countries took this decision earlier, some years ago, and it only worsened the relations with them, and therefore it's only going to affect the relations negatively between the U.S. and Iran.
Now, from what I understand, Secretary Clinton had no choice. She was sort of ordered by courts to do this, that, the MEK, love them or hate them, they have not proven to be committing any sort of terrorist activities. What do you know about, the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of Secretary Clinton having to make this announcement?
Again, it shows you how big lobbying, how important lobbying is in this country. This court decision wouldn't have been in place if it weren't for all these efforts on the part of the Congress. More than 150, some people say more than 150 members from both the Senate and the Congress were involved in this. Think tanks, even journalists who were paid to promote and basically work on behalf of the MEK in the U.S. and other countries.
Let me, for those viewers who haven't been following this story, I do want to name some names here, because it's really important to note that this is not a red or blue issue. There's a long list of Washington sort of A-listers that have been enlisted by the MEK, by their lobbying machines, to sort of help with this effort. We're talking former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, a Republican, former presidential candidate Howard Dean, a Democrat from Vermont. We're talking Tom Ridge, the Homeland Security Secretary under George W. Bush. We're also talking about Carl Bernstein, the journalist from the Washington Post, got his fame from the Watergate scandal. Republicans and Democrats in this town cannot work together to pass a budget. They can't even work together, as we saw last week, to pass a veterans jobs bill. What is it about the MEK, a former terrorist group, that's so bipartisan?
I mean, don't you like just to think that they sympathize with the group? But the fact of the matter is, there is Iran. And it seems as if Iran unites basically the Democrats and the Republicans, especially, and you talked earlier about the timing, especially now when they want to prove to Israel that they're number one. Iran comes number one as well when it comes to showing how against it, how anti-Iran their efforts will be.
Rima, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but just last question for you. I mean, what do you think are some sort of predictions in terms of what happens in the very near future after MEK is officially delisted?
Well, yes, I don't have the crystal ball, but a lot of people think that this is just going to encourage other groups. We don't know how, we don't know to what extent, but a lot of groups will think this group has done this and this and this, and now they're delisted because the game has changed in town, and therefore it might change for us. It's only going to have negative impact. We know
that's a really interesting
in the near
point,
future.
I mean, what a message that this has put forth. Bring your money, honey. Bring it to Washington, and you can get just about anything you want. Very interesting. RT Arabic correspondent Rima Abu Hamdia, thanks so much.